He's okay?
After the operation?
He's had quite a few checkups, but it's supposed to be, the decider whether the surgeon thought it was a good idea to go car racing again.
Oh, right.
Australia in the 80s was an optimistic wonderland. Television, films, and magazines reminded us just how good we had it, and that, bolstered by a giant economic boom, made Australians hungry for new ideas. Those circumstances couldn't have been more perfect to set up the arrival of an American phenomenon that was going to blow audiences away. And those early, teething years of this sport attracted a tough form of racer that wouldn't ever be seen again. A passionate driver who built their own car, drove it to the track, and risked everything night after night to be on the podium.
What does winning mean to you? Is it more important money or prestige?
And that's what made this generation so special. They called it sprint car racing.
800 or 900 horsepower with an aerofoil on the top and goes just in a circle on a clay base or dirt track.
All motorsport's dangerous, and these are too. They're pretty safe up to about 100 miles an hour or 160 kilometres. After that, they're probably not built to survive a massive crash.
Something where the track changes every corner, where the car could be on the back wheels one moment, on one wheel the next, on four wheels the next.
It's dirty, it's fast, it's short, so everything happens here in one night.
When you drive on one, it's just nothing like it. It's the speed, it's the noise. When I raced, we didn't have to run mufflers, and it was just deafening, but the sound of them was absolutely beautiful. And they still sound lovely.
Sprint car racing is about racing around an oval as fast as you can in the best possible car you can.
Thanks a lot for everybody for turning up and keeping sprint car racing going.
All right, and the man who turned it on tonight like we've never seen him turn it on this year, and he kept the wing straight, Wing Commander Niffer Lacey!
There wasn't a lot of money attached to it, not like today, but it was a very good part of my life, sprint car racing, a very good part.
My passion was to get the motor to go faster. I spent 50 years doing the same thing.
Overall, the best sprint car driver this country has produced would have to be Garry Rush.
The fans were ecstatic. They had a hero, they had a villain, and that's what Garry Rush always showed up like. He was the villain of his day.
There was good guys and bad guys. You were either a Bill Barrows fan or a John Moyle fan. You're an Alf Barbagallo fan or you're a Noel Bradford fan. You couldn't have a foot in each camp.
They were gentlemen. They were rock stars.
Who I am? I'm an old legend.
At least at sprint car racing you can see them stand at the fence or sit in the stand, you can see the whole race the whole time. That's probably one of the good things about it. You don't miss anything.
The reality is the essence of what we do, the dirt, is still not as broadly appealing to a major audience as it is to the rest of the world.
If you're not winning or crashing, you're not trying hard enough.
Car machine blues, let me tell you now, that's a...
What would you tell someone who was about to go sprint car racing? And I said, tell them to go down to the bank, tell them to take a large sum of money out of the bank, bring it home, put it in the middle of the table, set fire to it, watch it burn, and then you're happy with that, you go sprint car racing.
Here's Woody Woodpecker, sold it in promoters looking for their Black & Decker. Staggy, just ask American Jack Hewitt who jumped in one of the heats, as did local boy Eddie Dobby. In the case of the not-so-steady Eddie, the legend Bill Porter paid the penalty for not doing what he ought to. a spectacular start thanks to Paul Lindbergh.
Now that's me. From the day I was born, sprint car racing was all around me. I fell asleep to the 150 decibel roar of my father tuning his engine in our backyard, and would happily go on tour with my family, watching my dad's team race all around Australia. Even though my childhood was spent around so many people with speedway at the center of their lives, I didn't follow my father in his footsteps. Instead of becoming a sprint car driver, I left our remote continent and moved to Berlin to tour Europe as a musician and DJ, which was the passion of my life. Later on in life, it occurred to me. My father never went back to the track after he retired, and his story, alongside hundreds of other heroes from his day, would only be remembered by the photography and crash videos of the period. And while that crash footage is spectacular, it was barely a fraction of the whole story of sprint car racing in Australia's wild and rambunctious 80s. And what we missed from this history was the motivation that drove this generation of gentlemen to go so fast and so hard. So I packed my bags to leave cold Europe, and with countless questions in my head, I arrived back home in sunny Australia.
Dog's coming, right? Water, James? You want water and coffee? We were up in Sydney, went up there for a Formula 5000 race at Oran Park, and on the Saturday night a friend of mine said, I'm going to take you to Granville, which is Parramatta or Sydney Speedway as it is now, and I'm going to show you these sprint car races. Now, we'd seen obviously sprint cars at Rowley Park, but the old type. We went along there to watch the sprint cars, and we both walked up to the fence. Cars went past, our mouths dropped to the ground. When John, our friend, came back to pick us up afterwards, we were still standing there with our mouth on the ground full of clay because it was unbelievable. And I made up my mind, that moment, I had to have one of those cars. And that's exactly what happened.
There he is there. He goes into turn number 3 and the checkered flag being prepared. GIL Cameron's going to take out heat number 8 of the Brickworks Grand Prix. He goes over the line first in second place, car 3.
End of the year, there was, I think 3 or 4 of us that year were rookies, and at the end of the year they reckon I was best of a bad bunch or whatever, so I was the rookie of the year, so that was pretty cool.
One flag's out, 1 lap to go. McCallum looks like he's got this one. Oh, Cameron through, clips, goes underneath. Incredible stuff, bounces now. I don't know how the stewards are there. McCallum comes back at him. Now it's Cameron up high. McCallum throwing a tighter line. And over they go.
So there we've got a sensation of the start-finish line. Oh, GIL Cameron. What more do you need?
But we did see one of the most sensational crashes ever at Speedway Park.
Look at that. Up and over. That's a big crash. GIL Cameron. 2, 3 cars involved in that.
GIL Cameron ran over Birmingham's whirl and flip. Next to go in the black car was Chaz Calandro. David Veers in the white car. Luckily, no one was hurt.
Some drivers
might not have been too happy with me, because I worked on a theory with the car in front of me. If I could see a gap, see through a gap between it and someone else, or hitting the fence or hitting me, I'd drive through it. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't.
Oh, look at this! That's on the other side! Huge trouble! Well, there we are. Look out! Oh, it just cleared the track.
I worked in the family business in that time, and I had 2 small kids. I had a toddler and a baby in the 80s, so I was very busy. Busy at work, busy at home, busy raising children. In fact, it's almost a blur. At the end of your life, you think, what did you do? I didn't do anything except look after kids and ran them around. Looked after a house, looked after a business, paid bills, did wages. That's it. It was a good time because it was an easy time. There wasn't a lot of pressure around. You could afford to do what you wanted to do. You know, it was an easier time. Things just got harder as time went on.
It seemed natural that the next step would be to take my dad back to the track for the first time in 30 years and continue to assemble the stories of his old friends and foes from the period known as the golden era of dirt track racing.
I used to come down here a lot of Saturday nights. Yeah, it's a good place to come, good part of the world. And this is my roots from here. This is where my family came from this town. I think I might have won a heat race, that's about all. Crashed and burned a couple of times. When you walk in, it's like coming home. It really is. I just said to James, the more I hang around here, the more I realise how much I miss it. Unfortunately, that's probably not a good thing. I'll cry in a minute. So, yeah, this is very good. Yeah.
Friday, Bill would race in Adelaide, and I didn't go because the children were at school, and I don't take them out of school. So Saturday night we'd go everywhere with him, and we met some fabulous people, saw some fantastic places. It was great.
You meet so many people, and you seem to stop friends with them for years.
We unfortunately lost my brother-in-law, Rodney Day, in a speed car incident 24 years ago. At that time, we all pledged that we would make this track as best as we can with management and make it so that way all the drivers enjoy themselves and are much safer.
He only did it one-handed, you
say? One-handed, he was doing it easy, yeah.
But he does cheat a bit because he actually does use that other hand. Somewhere or other he makes a clip, don't you?
The competitors off the racetrack, they're good friends, and I think that's what we love about this sport. On the racetrack, everyone's competitive and you're out there to win, whereas yeah, on the weekends, everyone's able to relax and have a great time.
One night in Raleigh, Speedway Park, I was getting out of the car and I went to walk off, and Bill was saying, come back, let the doctor have a look at you. He said, I think he's cut his hand. And I couldn't get out of the pitch quick enough, left him with my car.
We thought it was funny anyway. That's the night I crashed you, I did that, and I'll tell you now, in front of the camera and my son, I couldn't pass you, and I did that on purpose, and I'm really sorry about that, and I've lived in regret for my entire life. I've just about been in therapy over this. I tell you, I'm really sorry I did that, but I did it, and so that's...
Well, you knocked the one-hand man off the track.
I did. I'm just an animal, let's face it.
Speedway is a family atmosphere. It is a very strange thing to understand, but so many people will know you, they'll see you. People know who I am. I don't even know them by their name, but I know them by their car, the colour. They go, hey mate, how you going? And people talk to you. You do not even know who they are sometimes.
I got a little frustrated and I did that. I'm very sorry. I
got an apology.
I got an apology from me.
After 50 years.
Yeah. You remember what it cost to fix that?
Yeah, he sent the bill.
A number of motor racing groups are a family. And they work together, they argue, they fight like a family, but when something hurts, they come together as a family. And over the years, we've had a couple of serious ones here, and they really have acted very much as family members and consoling and encouraging each other. And that's a very good thing.
We helped each other a lot more with parts and that, and there wasn't a town you could go to if you were in trouble. Someone in Speedway that would help you.
Would help you, absolutely right. Yeah.
You know.
They're selfish. They're extremely selfish because only one person enjoys driving, and that's the driver. You can't tell me the people that work on the car all night and drive for hours and hours and hours to get to the next race meeting. They're having a great time. It's the driver that has the great time. So they're selfish.
I think I went through a stage of depression, like I was very depressed about it. I actually tried to keep fit because I was probably 40 years old, 15, 16 years, 17, 18 years ago. And I thought, I'll go jogging and do a bit of weights and all that sort of stuff just to try and keep a bit fit, just in case I get the call. But no, that didn't happen, so I didn't.
He couldn't do it justice, you know. And then I think the last night I really put an effort in was rush Garry's last night. Then that sort of come in one night and said to me, mate, what's wrong? I said, I don't want to do this anymore. That was it. I didn't run again.
I was probably 3 years ago I got it back in my head that I might do it, but after the first night I was going up the straight and one car went that way and one that way, and I thought, oh, they're going quick.
I finished racing around 95 and I was racing at Warrnambool, and I thought I don't need this any longer. I felt I had to drive faster than I wanted to drive, comfortably drive, and I thought I don't need that any longer. And I loved the place, you know, and it just got to the point where it was faster than I wanted to drive, and normally I'd driven reasonably quickly over the years.
The driver of car number 54, and incidentally sponsored by First Place, 40 times.
1999, here at Parramatta. On that same night, George Tatnell, Peter Kraft, Bob Blacklow and myself retired that night at the end of the season in 1999. Garry Rush came back. He was only ready to retire for a couple of years, and he came back for a few more seasons. We all retired on the same day, the four of us.
I haven't.
Simple as that.
There was a fair few things happening in my private life, as well as buying a business partner out, so I had total responsibility for the business then, and you just couldn't spread yourself that thin, and it went back to the fact that you can't do it by not giving 100% to it, so I thought it was better to stop. I just had too much to do, so you stay away, and that's the only way you can do it. It's only been really since the start of all this that I've started going back. I've seen more sprint car racing in the last year than I've seen in the last 10. So
I've never driven a 410 sprint car. I'd love to drive a new one of these late model cars just to see what they're like. That's all, just to drive it. I don't want to go racing anymore. I've been there and done it, and I don't want to end up hurt, which is generally what's happened. A lot of guys come back thinking they can come back and do it again, and end up something goes wrong and they get hurt real bad, and think, no, I don't need that anymore.
If I haven't got the time or the money to do it how I want to do it, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to be there to try and just make up the field. I want to be competitive. So yeah, it's getting close, but I don't think I'm done.
You can't be competitive though. You look at Garry Brazier, which is 7 or 8 times Australian champion, and he comes out today and he can't keep up with the other cars, and that's so he should give it up. He can't stop. No, well, he'll race tonight, so yeah.
And you know in your own heart that you're not as quick as you used to be, and when you're being quick and you know you're not that quick anymore, your pride won't let you keep doing it. That's probably the best way to put it.
All of my father's former adversaries were easy to find. We only had to look for the shiny new trucks belonging to the teams of their sons. In this regard, it seems more like it had not been my father who was missing all these years, but rather the two of us who had been absent from the track.
Somewhere along the line, I introduced my son Nick into motorbike racing, and of course it all started again.
Yeah, I think they love it because it's in the family. They want to impress their parents too, I bet.
If my son said don't want to do it anymore, I would do it with someone else, possibly.
It's great being involved with your kids. It's great.
Today it's all about these kids just going out there and being prepared to tear up a race car. You got a 2 or 3 year period to make your name, and by that time Mum and Dad's mortgage is going to be gone. When I got into it, I got Dad's car that he'd been running. We stripped it down and built him a new car, and after his car was built, he then said, if you can put that car back together, you can race it.
And I know, after what happened to me, I don't think your mother would have been very happy if I'd come home and said, oh, by the way, I'm putting James in a sprint car or something like that. I don't think she would have been very happy about that. So.
Yeah, but you did try.
Well, the stock car was bad enough. I got myself into a lot of trouble over that. So
keep me in the dark. He was disappearing over night time. Not that he was home early anyway, but he'd disappear. And I'd say, where are you off to now? And he'd say, oh, I'm going to help Flatty with his car. And I thought, that's a bit strange. He said, well, Flatty's helped me with mine, I'm going to help him with his. And I thought, it's still a bit strange. And all the time he was building you a car to go racing in. And I didn't know until the day that you were about to go, and I was livid. I was so furious. I hadn't been asked how I felt about you racing. Nothing. I was furious.
Probably should have told her first, but
Can you just tell us how you managed to win that in the first place?
It was easy. Didn't tell her. That was the easy part.
And all I heard was that you were quite slow. And I thought, well, that's all right. There's nothing wrong with going slow. You're not crashing going slow. Sorry.
Originally, I started this documentary in honor of my father and to solve what I thought was a big gap in speedway history. However, over the course of the shooting, something changed. My father, in being reacquainted with the world he loved so much, started to go through a process that was a lot deeper than just a plain history. He started to get over whatever fear of being back at the speedway was, a fear that I didn't quite yet understand. He started to play an active part in the documentary, so subsequently, I had to change my focus and think about how our lives could have been if we had been one of those racing dynasties.
Even after the title, could we come and interview you and Melinda?
Yep.
Because James's approach, he should be explaining this, not me. It's not my job. I'm the chauffeur.
When are you coming up to Sydney?
We shortly visit Melbourne after this, and then we'll come up probably on Tuesday.
Get you next week, Kate. I'm GIL Cameron.
Oh, hey, Garry.
Nice to meet you, old man.
Yeah. Jordan's probably a little different to what I was, but kids as the world changes, that's how things go. But he's definitely dedicated and he wants to, be Australia one, I guess you'd say. But it takes a lot of work now, and you've got to put 110% focus on it, otherwise you won't get it. So.
Does he feel like, does he think he's going to get it a bit easier than you thought you had it?
No, I mean, nothing's easy. It's even harder now because you're getting a lot more cars and there's a lot more people spending a lot of money. Obviously it was hard for everybody to come through. Even when I come through, you see your goal to win. I was probably a little different than most. I won pretty much straight away. But I had my dad there, which knew he was a bit ahead of the game at the time. He used to actually make your own parts and do your own different things in the day, where now you just buy it off the shelf.
How do you mean when you said that he thinks of it a bit different from you? How do you mean?
Oh, no. I mean, he definitely knows it's tough, you know what I mean? His main focus in his mind, he wants to be the best. But it definitely is a little bit tougher. But he's doing it the right way. He goes to the gym like all the younger generation does now, and your mindset on it, you're fit. And, we used to go probably to the pub and have a couple of beers and stuff like that. So
both your grandfather and dad both said they worked.
They were hard workers. See, they used to go to work and race. Now I didn't have to really go to work as much, but I still got to race and now even Jordan, he works with my dad all the time. And at the end of the day, it's hours and hours of work, especially if you want to be at the top.
Garry's home at the moment. He is, because he's doing trailer, how to rest. Hello, how are you going? Okay.
While visiting the Brazier household, it was our first opportunity to see how 3 generations of sprint car drivers work together.
Oh, was he growling in there? Would that been him? It would have been in there. Did you build this thing? This wasn't here when you came in here. The shed was here.
And it was there that I realized that late into the night, in a shed with a sprint car waiting to be prepared, brought my dad back into his natural element.
Brett Lacey said he was running in a race somewhere against you, and there was a stoppage. And he said, I'm sitting in the car, big stoppage, busting for a fag. So he said, I looked around, and Steve went over and you had a cigarette and a lighter in your top pocket, is that right?
That's right, yeah.
He told us that. We were killing ourselves laughing. He said, you ask him. He said, I did it. So, yeah.
Because he wouldn't have seen that ever happen before.
No, I think that would probably American.
very family orientated sport, and it's very individual as a driver, because you take everything away from everybody else, so your family has to be involved. My son's 4th generation racer, really, yeah, if you put it down like that, yeah.
He was a good racer, my dad. I learnt you never give up, you never stop trying. You've got to stay on the throttle the whole time.
Now with Garry and Jordan, what has been the main thing that you've tried to teach them?
You go out there to win every race. You never look backwards. I'm Steve Brazier.
Maybe we'll sit somewhere where you feel comfortable.
Yep.
Like.
All met the first time was when I was up here racing, I believe. Yeah, I came up to Parramatta and I was racing. I was staying with Rock and Alan Felsh. Alan Felsh is an engine builder, and Rock, Alan's wife, suggested to me that young girl over there's single. I might want to check her out. So that was like 1984, I think. So here she's coming to tell the truth.
Yeah, hello.
Hi, I'm Melinda Dumesny. Been married to Max for 30 years. We first met, I think Max was racing his first sprint car in Newcastle, and then the relationship, started from there.
Well, I guess the kids were forced into it. Like, I grew up, like I said, at Warrnambool, grew up with it. Melinda was forced into it pretty much because her parents, that's all they did on weekends, they went racing.
Yeah.
And ever since our kids have come along, they've been doing the same. They've been going to sprint car races since they were babies. And actually it's quite good because they actually know all the moves to be made and how they should be done. So when they started racing, they actually were ahead of the average kid that was out there because they knew how to do particular manoeuvres because they've been watching them all their life and they know where they've got to be on the track. It was just a matter of them applying themselves to getting that to happen.
So we moved together now. Not quite the racing team my father would have liked, but a team nevertheless. We started to quickly learn just how much the sport had evolved since my dad's outlaw days.
I think the essence of it is still the same. I think probably, if anything, there's probably less villains. And I think that's probably where the sport was biggest, was when there were heroes and villains.
You know what? It was just as competitive. I said, yeah, well, back in those days, if you did something wrong, someone fucking poked you in the nose. Doesn't happen anymore.
No.
Yeah.
Some of the newer generation guys we see come through, we won't see them in the sport for the 30-year period, like myself, Robert Farr, Garry Brazier. We've been in it for a long time, and our fathers were in it for a long time. I don't think you're going to see that next generation in the sport for that longevity.
Marcus last year, when he started out, he used only the second-hand tyres off anybody's car. But Matthew, he's better than that. He wants new tyres, and he won't settle for anything but. That's sort of the difference. Like they want, they get. I used to want, but struggle to get. So
back in those early days, you messed around and you tried to work out how you could make your car go better.
Fabricate it yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
It's different because it's more professional. Where these guys had a job and they race for fun. Now you've got quite a few who this is their job, racing. So it's really different because I don't know, but it's more professional. It's more your job. You have to win. You've got to earn money. You know, whereas it was a hobby for this era of guys.
You know, and I'm sure your dad recalls that stuff. He had a way of engineering rivalry, and I think that to some extent we want to make sure that you still protect people's reputations, but you still need bad guys. You still need people to boo when they want to boo and cheer when they want to cheer.
We've lost a lot of the characters. Sometimes we are too politically correct. The 80s was about exposure. As we moved into the 90s, bad publicity is going to cost you. Everyone's an expert, even though most of them have never driven a race car, to understand the circumstances of how things play out. And I think that's part of the reason why a lot of people don't want to be into the bad boy tag.
People used to, I see the word hate Americans, I don't mean hate, but there was a real passion. We couldn't stand seeing them beat us. Whereas now we've become so used to it, and the Americans are always like, oh, everybody's treating us so nice, and we're having a great time, and we're driving for an Australian car owner. Well, Big Ed Wilbur would come out and they'd say, Ed, what do you think of Australia? And he'd say, if you put a handle either end of this country, you'd have the world's biggest garbage can.
Every single part of sprint car racing had evolved since my dad's time. The technology, the racing style, the attitude of a driver and team. Everything, that is, except one thing.
Do you think if you had a daughter, would she be racing as well? If she did want to, of course I would have supported her and helped her, but it's not a woman's sport, I don't believe. I still don't believe that. It's definitely a man's domain. But I don't have any problem with girls racing.
We've had some good female racers. They've just never been around long enough in the game.
Kathy Kelly, the Secretary of the Council, she's probably been her and Melinda Dumesny and Kelly Linigan have probably been the three most competitive. And Melinda Dumesny was good. She was a racer, but she wasn't. She had a family, 5 kids, so she was sort of not had the time or the commitment, but in her own right was very good. But in saying that, at the other end of the scale, honestly, and I'll probably get hung for this, but there's some of them that shouldn't drive a race car. They're not physically strong enough, and whether you like it or not, these things, if you have a prang, they'll bite, you know, and the female body is just not really strong enough. And I'm not being nasty to anybody, that's just how it is. You know?
It was a little bit difficult for me. I was probably one of the first females in Australia, and so in the back of my head I wasn't sure how the male race would accept a female out there. So sometimes it was a little bit like, what's a female doing racing? This is a male-dominated sport. So there were those few steps, those hurdles you have to overcome. And then once, a couple of years down the track, I was accepted, and then I'd build confidence. But I did find it a little difficult at first, being the only female in a male sport. And
You accepted it because you didn't know any different. It's like anything in your life that you look back on, you think, how wrong was that? Like not to allow women in the pits. But at the time, you didn't think of it like that. You just thought, that's just the way it is. It's just men. That's where men go, because it's I used to say it was dangerous, too dangerous, for women to be in there. Cars coming fast, and you might be walking across the road, or I don't know. I don't know what the reasoning was behind it, but it was just you accept it because that's just the way things were.
I remember one year at Knoxville Nationals, the year that I did qualify really well, and instead of actually in my mind, just let's race, I kept thinking, okay, I've got Steve Kinser behind me, and I've got the top Americans behind me, and I don't want to hold them up. And now that I reflect, I should never have had those thoughts in my head, because I actually went into the turn and I didn't go in full speed. I sort of backed off, and the minute you back off, everybody passed you, and I do have that regret, because you never ever think like that. You should always you're in that race car, you switch off, and you're there to, win. And that thought, I often thought, I don't want to be a nuisance. I don't want to, hold anybody up. But today's different. There's so many women out there, and I'm sure they don't feel like that, because there must be at least 10 women now that are racing in Australia, and they're doing extremely well, and I'm really proud to see the girls sort of stepping up to the male-dominated sport. And I do miss it, but you reach to a point in your life, you've got children, and the sport is dangerous. And I guess my priority then became the kids, and with their dad racing and their mum, it was my priority to stop racing and be a mum.
She did race whilst pregnant at one stage. She was the daughter in there.
And again, Blackwell on the outside, racing the American. Blackwell sweeps off turn 2, down the back section, and the crowd has gone absolutely crazy here at Parramatta. Oh, and a big goal, double ending, and is collected by Blackwell. Oh, dramatic action.
And I have to say, whenever Bill crashed, he'd always get out of the car, turn to where he knew I was sitting, give me a wave. When he knew he was all right.
That's lovely. I didn't get that. No. I didn't even get told when he had his accident in Warrnambool. Not for 24 hours. So it wasn't very important.
Can you go through this series of events for us?
It's Warrnambool. I can't remember the name of the race. It was a bit of a named event, like a reasonable feature race. Brett Lacey was actually leading the event, and we'd lapped this one particular car, I reckon, at least twice before. Feature race was only about 3/4 of the way through, so there was obviously a lot of speed difference. And we come up to lap him, and Brett went underneath him, and then I come to go underneath him, and he lost it. And as he spun around, he came down. I tried to get on the infield to miss him, and he got in front of my right rear wheel, and it flipped it end for end in the air. But unfortunately, it came down on its tail on the little concrete curbing that is around the inside of Warrnambool Speedway. And the force broke the diff free, and it punched it through the seat and punched me in the back and broke my back. So, that was not good. But they...
I remember going out to the midfield and seeing my brother upside down in his car, and they were struggling. I had to push my way in and say, this is what you have to do. You need to take the wing off, you need to do this, and rightly or wrongly take control of it, sort of to get him out, because there's also the danger of fire. But they dragged my brother out, took the wing off, took him through the top of the car, and there was very little gap between the pit gate and the wall and all that, but I just remember the adrenaline was so high that I was just focused, It was all about my brother.
They got a surgeon there, the head surgeon from Warrnambool Base Hospital, he came there, and they just I heard him say to my dad, I was conscious by then obviously, and I heard him say to my dad, he'll never walk again, that's it, we can't do anything for him, and he left, that was it.
I can still remember it. It does get you.
But as it turned out, I was lucky enough that my spine was crushed to nothing, and once the swelling went away, I got some feeling, and it took a while, but I could actually get around, so it's just lucky.
Well, we used to get together, a group of us, to watch Formula One racing, and he would go away, and we would get together to watch Formula One and have barbecue at this place. And this was on the Sunday night after the Saturday night race in Warrnambool. And the truck driver walked in, and I said, "Where's Gil?" And he said, "Hasn't anyone told you?" And I said, "Told me what?" He said, "Gil's in Warrnambool Hospital."
We sent him back to Adelaide, and Dad stayed down there. And then that was from the Saturday night, and then on the following Friday, because he came down every day and just sat there with me, and he came down there, and I realised that I could just feel my toes.
And I had so many mixed emotions, like, is he going to be all right? How bad is he hurt? And then anger that I wasn't told.
And was it his decision to not tell Mum, or someone else?
No, it's his decision. In hindsight, that was a shocking mistake. We should have got her down there, which would have made it easier for everybody, but that wasn't good. It was his decision.
And when I asked him later, I said, "Why wasn't I told?" And His father, who was with him at the time, said, they were a bit concerned that I might do something irrational, like jump in the car with a baby and try to drive to Warrnambool. I thought, how little they knew me, as if I would do that.
He was frightened. You know, there's nothing I could do. I said to him, we can't do anything about it now. It's done. You know, like, it's not like you can say shoulda, coulda, or woulda, or I wish, or whatever. Not going to reverse it. It was done. And it was just, I was lucky. You know, that's all I can put it down to. The promoter rang Bill Barrows in Mount Gambier, and Billy got me on a plane, and then the promoter drove me up to Mount Gambier. That was pretty horrendous, sitting in the car, but he drove me up there, and then I got the plane and flew home. Yeah, so.
He came home and he could walk, but not very well. And they said he was very lucky to be able to walk. So I was relieved that he wasn't going to be in a wheelchair. But from that point on, he had such chronic back pain and back problems, it just was very difficult. He was a very difficult man to live with.
Where's your daddy?
I'm asleep.
Your daddy's asleep?
Yeah.
Why is he asleep? Why is he asleep in bed?
Because he's got so bad.
Oh, poor daddy. Did you give him a kiss to make him better?
I drove again before I had the operation. I got back in the car.
Did you have to get a doctor's checkup?
You have a medical every year, yeah. You just don't tell them certain things. You just sort of say, yep, she's right, mate. And I didn't tell them.
Well, I was waiting to hear the surgeon's report, and I thought, there is no way that a surgeon would ever say, get back in the car and go racing again. Not when you've broken your back. But Gil was very vague about it, about what was being said, and because I couldn't go to the appointments with him because I had a baby to look after, I wasn't privy to what was said. And he just came home and said, yeah, he's racing this weekend. And I thought, well, somebody must have said it was okay.
And anyway, John Sidney, he rang me up because we used to buy shock absorbers off, and he said, I wouldn't mind you driving one of my cars for me. And I said, well, I would if I could afford it. But he gave me a car, no engine or anything like that, but he gave me a car. And the deal was that I sold cars for him then, I sold shock absorbers for him and all that sort of stuff. I got a new car, which was super safe compared to the old ones. Yeah, because I don't think he wanted to see that happen again. Well, you wouldn't get away with it twice, but I've broken my back since again. But yeah, like I said, I went back to driving in that car before I had the operations on my back. So yeah, which was probably stupid, but that's the way it is. Like I said, it gets back to the desire. That's what I wanted to do. So yeah.
But every time we raced, I thought he could end up in hospital again, this time coming home in a wheelchair. It just wasn't enjoyable for me. And he still had his crashes and rollovers like they all do. And each time it happened, it was just heart and mouth stuff. It wasn't enjoyable.
It is what it is. You just have to get on, you know. There's no good. There's no use feeling sorry for yourself because it's totally self-inflicted. I don't even know the name of the guy who turned around and turned me over. Wouldn't have a clue. Don't know. Don't want to know, and I would never ever say anything to him if I did know, because when you go out the gate, there's a chance you take. You know, there's no one standing there with a gun to your head saying get in that car. You are getting in that car because you want to get in that car, and so that's all there is to it. You know?
What do you need to become a champion? You need to want it so bad. Number one is you just need it. You need to want it. You need to want it, do it so bad.
It's the best motorsport there is. Flat out turn right, go left. When you've got 900 horsepower in a car that only weighs around about 1,400 pounds.
Pure horsepower, flat out on dirt. Go as hard as you can. Simple as, yeah. Just bury the boot and go for it. There you go.
Get them into this, it's better than drugs.
Good to see him. It's all brand new roof.
Much to the chagrin of my mother, I knew I would soon have to jump behind the wheel of a sprint car. And also, we had to address the elephant in the room. Why had the biggest star of the sport been erased from the tracks? I'd seen photos and dedications to all the other big names of sprint car history, but Garry Rush was nowhere to be found. But before then, I was going to visit someone who could explain to me the intimate relationship between a driver and his car, a detail I missed as a non-racer. That person was the Mad Professor. Thank you. Can you tell us why you had the reputation of the Mad Professor?
I'm a mechanical engineer. I did training, and I enjoy the challenge of trying to make something better. And I was always trying things on my car, just little things, weren't so obvious to most people, but just trying to get that little edge over the next guy. I did have one that we developed over a winter, and it was a World Series. We had to go to Kalgoorlie for our first race, and it wasn't good. By the time we got to Perth, we had to cut and shut the car at Ray Geneve's shop and put it back to pretty much a standard car because we didn't have the time to develop it, but in theory it's a good idea and would still work today.
What was the idea?
We were separating roll from bounce with the suspension. That's our problem. We don't have time to test or develop. You go there on the night and race hard. And if you get it right one night, that just fuels you for another 50 nights. It's like hitting a golf ball. If you hit one good golf ball, people keep going back to play golf, but this has just got so much more adrenaline than golf. I've still got the equipment back at my workshop, and I can give you a little sample of how it worked. I do now, I didn't at the time, but blue axle's a standard axle, black one's an offset, so everything's over an inch.
Make big difference to the car. Like one on that's stupid.
And would you have been in trouble for this one or not?
Not at the time, but I wouldn't do anything illegal, put it that way. Well, just because we're turning left all the time, the weight's transferring to the right, so the more we can get onto the left, then it's going to balance it out and be more even as we go around. Back in the day when we had steel axles, so I had this, replace that, and that was pushed through there, so it looked like a standard rear end. And just had fully floating hubs.
These cars, because two wheels are on one axle and they're both driving at the same speed, that's why you have to have a tall wheel on the outside, small wheel on the inside to make the cars turn. But they still will always, on entry, they'll always want to try and push. If you have something like that, where the minute you lift off, it unlocks, car will roll around the corner, it won't push.
Did you fabricate it from yourself?
Scratch, yeah.
That's a huge job.
But I've kept all that. You have to keep it. What can you do?
Well, the reason being is when you build your next hot rod for the street, put that in it. Yeah. That's excellent. This is the important part, is that piece. That one there, give you Engineer of the Award, that one, I tell you, boy. That is very clever.
So that was effectively all of that.
Yeah.
One day I think I should actually build a car with all the stuff in it.
Yeah.
You're one of the few who's ever seen this.
Yeah.
Honestly.
This is unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I still can't believe that.
That was really early days, glider roll. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Took all that to his grave, he's really chuckling about that one, I reckon.
So you know that I'm going to be getting into a sprint car soon.
I think it's ridiculous.
If I told you that I really am looking forward to it, I think I would like to even have a race.
I couldn't watch you. Couldn't watch you. And I love sprint car racing, but I couldn't watch you race. I don't even want to watch you. They're dangerous. They're difficult to drive and they're dangerous. And you can't see. There's mud in your face. You weren't born to be a racing car driver. I don't think you've got that kill, crush, destroy in you. You're a musician.
Some of the best racing I've seen around here would have been Garry Rush.
Troy always knew the stats on everyone in the 80s. Who was your favourite?
Garry Rush, the Master Blaster.
Garry was a psycho case. And I mean that nicely.
Your favourite driver of the 80s?
Garry Rush.
Garry Rush.
Yeah?
Yeah.
The former, the current national champion, Garry Rush from Sydney, fighting extremely hard alongside him. Dust the snow to clear of the track as they move down the next straight once ago. Garry Rush takes the lead in the 1985 Australian Sprint Car Championship.
10 times national champion. He was a clean driver, not a dirty driver, and he was just brilliant to watch.
Oh, because he was just so good and just won everything. Was always up the front. Courteous driver.
If Elvis is still alive, he's with Elvis Presley right now.
5 is the unofficial. We're going to look for a record for this man. It's Rush around the top bend there. Here's Garry Rush at victory. Car number 2 from New South Wales.
Why is he the best? Because none of these blokes could catch him.
For 30 years he dominated the sport on all surfaces and in different divisions.
Oh, and there's a tangle there, and Greg Flaherty's involved. It was involved Rushy and Bunker as well. And Rushy's flipped it. Oh, how did he keep it on its wheels? Anyone else would have flipped it 5 times, and he's still mobile. Can you believe this man? I don't believe it. I've never seen anything like it in my life.
Once he got banned from racing in an Australian title, and he went to the Supreme Court and got an injunction and an appeal, and he landed in at Warrnambool in a helicopter to compete in the Australian title, which he went on to win, and he subsequently also won the appeal. So that was just fantastic. You know, have you ever heard that before, you know? But that's what happened.
Off-track personality. I think a lot of people read him wrong. He's a businessman.
I was always a fan of Garry's, and I always listened to what he said, so whatever he done, right or wrong, it's done, so yeah.
A lot of people never liked him, but I've got 2 or 3 of his t-shirts.
Garry Rush is a legend of our sport, and is still the top gun that we all line our careers up and compare to.
Where is Garry Rush now? Sitting at home, probably drinking a cup of tea. He'll be back? He'll be back.
No one knows.
He's in exile.
He's exiled, that's right.
Aussie! Aussie, Aussie, Aussie!
We've talked to all of the champions of the 1980s so far. We've interviewed them being in their homes. The only one we are missing is Garry Rush.
Leave behind the cage.
Do you know where we can find Garry Rush?
Well, he's around here somewhere.
Here right now, he's probably out on the golf course at Riverside Oaks, bagging the ball around.
Where can we find Garry Rush?
He's the best guy to talk to. He's been around for years.
If you ring him up at his work, pick and pay less, you'll be able to get him there.
Okay. Could you tell us why he's been so hard to find, maybe?
Too busy working.
Machine blues, let me tell you now, that's the truth. been doing the majority of our shooting last year when you hadn't been seen for a while. So we're playing a bit of a game with the fans, asking, where's Garry Rush? We got some pretty crazy answers. A lot of people thought you were golfing in Hawaii or you were hanging out with Elvis. We had a lot of good answers. Maybe since so many people gave their answers, could you just give them a clear answer of where you've been for the last few years?
I'll be totally honest. A good friend of mine owned Parramatta City Raceway. I took him to America in 1971 and he got married over there and established a business, and he remained a good friend of mine. And he had some success in business over there, and he came home to Sydney and bought Parramatta Speedway. But he had a partner, an American businessman, a partner over there. And unfortunately, my friend went to work one day and had a massive heart attack and died. And that left our Sydney Speedway with a decision, where's it going to go? Because the American owner didn't want it. He didn't want nothing to do with it. And he was prepared to close it down. And I knew the state government wanted that land back to do other things. We went to the minister, the sports minister, and he asked him, would he supply us the money to buy the Speedway off the American? And he come back to us and said, no, I can't do that, but you get a consortium of people together and raise the money, and I'll promise you you'll have a new Speedway at Eastern Creek within 2 years. So I got a consortium of people together, and we put our hands in our pockets and we put a lot of money in it, and it didn't come cheap. And we run it for about 2 or 3 seasons or 4 seasons. We made a lot of mistakes. I think we made a lot of good decisions. We made quite a couple of bad ones that cost us a lot of money. No one made any money out of it. There was no arguments in that 5 people, but it was coming to that. It was getting close. Unfortunately, at the next state election, that government got voted out and we had to start all over again. One day, that Speedway will go to Eastern Creek. And I think it'll be better for the sport. When we sold the Speedway, there was a few things I wasn't happy with, and I just thought I need a rest. Yeah. I went back last year for the Australian title when Kerry Matson won.
So you were there when we were there last year?
Yeah.
You're actually asking everyone, it means you were there.
Yeah, I paid my way in. I paid at the front gate and went into the Speedway. Yes. We need state governments to support our sport. Football, cricket, some of the best venues in the world, but they're supported by the government. And here I hear just recently, 18 years ago, we spent billions of dollars on a new stadium for the Olympic Games, and now, only 18 years later, they want us to go and spend another $1 billion so the football people can sit closer. We need people in our sport to knock on government doors and say, this is what we need. If you don't ask, you're not going to get. We went to so many meetings with state government pushing this for this new Speedway. What changed? Back in those days, we thought it was exciting, but I think the young guys coming through now, they're living in their world, and I think they think we may not think it's exciting, but to them it's what we seen back in the 80s, they're seeing now, and I think it's just exciting for them. But it's talking about individuals, I think there's some good, I'm not close to Speedway anymore, but there's some very talented young drivers out there. But I'm not sure what their personalities are like. I don't know. I don't know them well. When super modifieds went to sprint cars, the lesson I learned, I got out of a super modified and got into a sprint car. And I thought, wow, how good's this? And that taught me you better have the best cars, money that you can afford to win races. And that's what I worked hard for, to try to make sure I had the best cars under me. Not only do you have to have the best cars, you have to have the right people around you. You can't be successful on your own, especially when you're racing sprint cars. You need the right people around you. It's like any driver. If you haven't got the right people around you, it's going to be hard work. The driver has to tell the mechanic what's the car is doing out there. Sometimes the mechanic can see what it's doing, but it certainly helps if the driver can tell you he knows exactly what it's doing. Well, most drivers should know what they're doing, and they relate back to the mechanic. But I made it my business to know what my car was doing too. You can't do it forever. How old was I in '99? I was getting close to retirement age. And when the eyes, I still enjoy very good health. But if I could still see as good as I used to, I'd probably still race. And I still love, although no, I'm out of it now. When I retired, it took me a good 6 years to get it out of my system. You know, I guess as you get older, you start having eyesight trouble in the mid-40s, and when you get in your late 50s, it's, yeah. You know, speedway was my life. It's a good sport. I've never touched drugs. I've never seen drugs in Australia. I'm not saying they're not there, but I lived on adrenaline for 40 years. And that's a powerful drug. A very well-known American driver by the name of Mel Kenyon, and he'd been in some horrific accidents at Indy and midget racing over the years, and he had heard about my accident. He some good advice. He says it takes time. He says you can heal arms and things like that, but when you hit this thing, it takes time for it to heal. And I got in my car 6 months after I crashed, and I shouldn't have got in the car, and I wasn't going too good, so I took it easy. But after 12 months, I had a clear outlook.
Did you feel frustrated in this time?
No, it's just you just knew that you weren't as good as you weren't doing things as well as you should have been doing them. But I had a bad accident in 1980 in the United States, and it made me think about I could have given up my life for it. It was very close. But I raced, that was 1980, but I raced for another 19 years. But I had a different outlook. I wasn't prepared to give my life up after that accident. Prior to that, if you get killed, you get killed. I'm not sure if that's the way you look at it, but you didn't even think about it. But after that accident in 1980 at Ascot in California, I said to myself, that was close. I love racing, but I'm not prepared to give my life up. Speedway is a family sport. You know, it really is. And you have just, geez, you can sit here and name a lot of families that kids have followed on after their father. Well, look at Max Dumesny now. 3 sons and a daughter racing. That's a family business. You know, Nipper, his son, Steve and Garry, and now Steve's got his grandson racing. You know, it's a family sport.
When did your son start to race?
I can't tell you the exact date, but in the 90s, 80s, 90s, yeah.
Was that a big moment for you?
It still has the best memory I have in Speedway, the day he won his first main event. If you ask me, if anyone asks me off the street today, what's one of the best memories I've had in Speedway is the day he won his first race. I was in that race, and he beat a very good American driver doing it too, so I was very happy for it. Yeah. Fathers love their kids, mate. It just come about. He wanted to race, and we let him race, and he was going quite well. But unfortunately, he had a cancer problem, and that stopped his racing career. Yeah. He had throat cancer. If you think you're going to get hurt, you shouldn't be there. You shouldn't get in a race car if you're worried about getting hurt. It doesn't enter your mind.
Very close, very quick, doesn't it?
Well, the number one sacrifice is you're not at home with your family. That's the number one. And that took a toll on my family relationship. If I had my chance over again, I'd do it a bit different. Yeah, that's the number one sacrifice. And there's nothing for nothing out there. You don't come to have the best equipment under you. You have to get out there and work for it. And you know, they're not cheap to run. The only thing I'd change, I would have got my family more involved.
Well,
you know, and that's the only regret I have in my whole racing career. My only regret. I would have got my family more involved. Rather than be away interstate racing, I would have had them with me. You know, I was away from home a lot, and that takes its toll. I'm not sure if I should say this. I remember I may have already retired. We took my son to Perth to race at Kwinana, and I remember doing a couple of laps in his car, and I'd been out of the car for some time, I think, and I sat in the car and I enjoyed it. I just sat there after I stopped and done a few laps, and I enjoyed that so much. And I thought to myself, is this what God put me on earth for? To race a sprint car? That's how much I enjoyed it. I thought, this is where I belong. But that was just a thought that went through my head. Sprint is a sprint. It's not a long distance race. It's not a 24-hour Le Mans. It's not that. It's a sprint car. When they drop that green flag, your job is to get to the front, and that's where the sprint car comes about. A good example: Tony Stewart. Now he's a man that's one of the biggest names in America. And what's he do for the love of racing? Well, his own words were, "My job is racing NASCARs. My pleasure is racing sprint cars." But let me say this. Anyone that wants to race a car, you get in a sprint car on the right track with the right preparation and you'll get the thrill of your lifetime. Nothing comes close to it.
Jago, the Black Magic Victorian in front of... okay, that's Jago from... Lacey and Cameron. Cameron in a second position. It's second and third on the outside. Lacey and these hit Cameron, but no harm done. My goodness me! It's Jago's out of the race. He's pulled off the course. He's out of the race. Cameron in lead from Brett Lacey. That's the way it goes at the moment. It's South Australia's Cameron get a crack at third position, but number 20 Dubai won't let him. Okay, first and second now. We've got Cameron with the Victorian. Cameron with the Victorian hot on his heels. That's Lacey. Brett Lacey, car 26. He's out after Cameron. With 9 laps to go, anything can happen.